I would love to know, just to start, who were you when you were little? Like, what
Oh,
did little Kathy feel the world was and had to offer her, and what did she dream about?
mm, so, well, that makes me teary.
Oh,
Um, well, she loved dolphins, actually. Um, I dreamed about working with dolphins. Um, but then those dreams didn't expect to cry already. um, yeah, no, I was very sensitive. Um, yeah, very sensitive. Um, and yeah, my parents separated when I was 5, so I don't remember much before that, other than that I love dolphins.
my goodness.
um, and I wanted to run up and live on this, live by the sea. There's a lot when it comes to childhood stuff, and
Yeah,
it's still, I think, for so many of us, it's still very raw. No matter how much work you can ever do on it. But yeah, that question hit me straight in the heart. So thank you. Um, yeah, it was. I mean, childhood was not. I don't think it was as fun as it could have been. I loved art.
yeah,
Um, I love being creative. My cousins actually lived on a farm that was right next to um, a country park, and so all of my summers were spent there, and our grandma would look after us. And so we would literally go there every day. Or she did. She would walk us up and down and up and down. So a very early kind of love of nature
yeah,
and the woodland and the trees and the water and the insects and the animals, and just being outdoors was really part of a lot of our
yeah,
childhood. Um, yeah, I was very sensitive and um, quite emotionally shut down, actually. I learned 2019 actually that I was I was shown. I didn't kind of learn, but it was revealed to me in 2019. I just had an out of the blue kind of depression that
yeah,
came from nowhere, and
yeah,
all I kept seeing was myself as this like 5, 6 year old. And this moment in time, this memory that's very, very, still very real to me. I'm not going into the details, but it was. I believe that that was possibly my first. I often speak about depression as like a childhood depression and an adult depression, because
yeah,
the two things are totally different. And I think as
yeah.
a 5, 6 year old child, I wasn't aware. So and I was given the opportunity to heal that in 2019. Um, because yeah, it was childhood was actually really pretty shit, to be honest. Um, it There were obviously moments of there was so much fun, as as naturally, but I think that those events shaped who I was, and I was always meant to do that. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, childhood. I was an only child as well, so it was very,
Yeah.
very lonely. And yeah, I was very sensitive, very quite lonely. But I love dolphins, art, and nature, and my Barbies. I loved my Barbies.
I was right on board until you said that. Can't be friends now.
That's it, over. I think Barbies and Polly Pockets and those like things. I can't remember what they were called, but yeah, I had all the 80s toys. All the 80s, 90s toys. That was
My
that
Little
was me.
Pony. My Little Pony.
Yeah, My Little Ponies. I had those too. Yeah. So yeah, it was all yeah.
I just want to reach out to you. Like, I'm gonna obviously come back to your kind of your dreams and visions as a child, but
Yeah.
I definitely want to connect with you there, because I find it so interesting that just at the point where I've been realizing over the last kind of year or so that my childhood wasn't much, either. And when people say, oh, connect with your inner child, your younger self, and like feel that joy again, and I just kind of been realizing, like, actually I can't remember any joyful moments from my childhood. I
Yeah.
really can't. And any of those points where they were kind of approaching joy was all about me being fully in my escapist imagination, whether that was outside in nature, in the hay fields, or playing on hay bales or in trees or
Yeah.
whatever, or whether it was writing stories, or
Yeah.
reading endlessly. Everything was escapist, and that was where I found my joy.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to connect to you on that, and the point about being super sensitive. I really relate to that as well. So you're not alone.
I know, no, totally know that. Thank you. Thank you. That's really beautiful. And the hay bales thing, that's we with the farm, we that's what we spent our summers doing, haymaking, and my cousins and I would make dens out of the hay bales,
Yeah.
and it would just be the best,
Yeah.
the best time ever. I do have on my altar, actually, I have a photo of myself, and this will make it's so funny. So I don't know, can you see that?
I can. Oh, you're gorgeous.
So this is a photo of myself before my parents split up, and I remember having that bike. So that bike, which was meant to be the happy, like a really happy moment. So it has bluebirds on it. It's got bird, it's got a box on the back with birds on it. And I remember this is the kind of child I was. So I cried. I said they put the bike in the spare room, and they opened my presents, and they were like, "Oh, there's one more surprise for you upstairs." And I went upstairs, and I cried because I was like, I've not been good enough to have this. I can't have this bike. Go. I'm not. I'm literally. I'm not worthy. And I was maybe 4 or 5 there. I also cried one Christmas because I didn't know how I was going to keep my room tidy with all the toys that I had.
Oh.
Santa's bought me too many presents. I'm not going to be able to keep my room tidy. I'm so sorry. So
But isn't that interesting as well? Not gonna try and be a psychologist here, but I recognize that, and I've talked about this quite a lot. I'm quite a messy adult now,
mm,
but I was a super tidy child.
yeah,
I was always tidying and rearranging my room, and I learned recently that that's one of the things, even in adults, that it taps into our deep need for safety and security.
yeah,
And I thought, oh, that makes sense.
doesn't it? I can so resonate with that. Same. I still like things to be quite clear and tidy because of my overwhelm is quite, I
Yeah.
have a real low tolerance for overwhelm, and stuff adds to that. So I do like clear spaces. But yeah, as a child, everything had to be, you know, green. And
Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's for wanting to be the good girl, I think,
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
loved and accepted. And yeah, it's a real big truth, that one. Thank you.
So coming back to your, like, what were your visions and dreams? Did you kind of have anything at that
Mm.
time, or did that develop over time, do you think?
Yeah, no, I never knew what I wanted to do. Um, a marine biologist was the only thing that I'd heard of that I wanted to do. And when I speak to loads of people, obviously, but there's somebody, I can't remember who it is now. Like, "Oh, she's a marine biologist too." And we actually do very similar things now at this time. And it was that whole, oh, well, you have to be really good at science to do that, and you
Mm.
have to go live by the sea, marine. Do you know why marine? Like, I don't think my mum ever did that in a malicious way, but oh, do you know what marine biologists actually do?
Yeah.
Um, and once I was like learning that, I was like, oh, maybe I don't really like. I've never been on a boat, you know. It's like I don't know, 7-year-old. Yeah, I've actually never been on a boat. Maybe that's not for me. I don't live anywhere near the sea. Maybe that's not for me. Um, and I think that deep calling to like the ocean and work with sea animals just comes from a kind of soul place, a
Yes.
real deep past life place. Um, and because I don't think we're not supposed. Everything happens for a reason. Um, and what I do now isn't really, I don't think you. Well, I suppose you can. I quite put myself down around this because I find it very hard when people say, "Oh, what do you do?"
Mm.
And you could ask me anything, and I'd cry my way through it, but still answer you. But you ask me directly, "What do I do?" And I'd be like, literally, I'm like, it's the most awkward question that you could ask me
I
because
Yeah, I feel the same. Yeah.
yeah, it's like,
And
oh,
I would love to hear your take on this because for me, it's and obviously it's evolved as I've evolved over the years, but but I feel like it really is tapping into that kind of soul energy for ourselves, for others who we, connect with, and for the planet as a whole. And I'm sorry, but trying to describe that in a kind of very, earthbound structure, kind of systematic, especially when you're filling in like a a government form or something. It's like,
yeah,
what
occupation,
do you?
no idea. So when you get your car insurance and you have to try and, they want a category and then they want a subcategory, and you're
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah,
I'll just go teach you, just do some kind of teaching.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Um, Something when you asked that, something came to mind that I've never thought of before. Why, I was thinking to myself, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard? And part of me thinks maybe that's because it's there's two things. So one, what I do evolves and changes all the time. So what I did 3 years ago is not what
yes,
I'm doing now. And so because it always changes, I don't want to pigeonhole myself.
yeah,
Like, oh, I do this because then some part of me thinks, well, you can't change because you told that person, that mum on the school run, that you do this. You can't change now because part of me there's
yeah,
that story, that narrative going on. But also, secondly, a lot of it is just I show up as myself. Like
yeah,
I don't. Yes, I am a breathwork healer, and that's the most kind of. I mean, I can say that to you.
yeah,
I couldn't say that to the mums on the school run. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'd have to go meditation teacher. There's
yeah, yeah,
really, pitch what you do is your truth. I show up as myself. I share what I am. I'm literally. I mean, I know there's other people like me. Of course, there is, but I'm like a constant self developer. Not like like a course junkie, but my whole reason for being is to move through challenges of being a
yeah,
divine being in human form
yeah,
and live life and face challenges that I'm facing, and then share that so that it helps other people.
yeah,
Um, and the term way shower comes to mind, and that doesn't really feel and sit comfortably with me, but it's almost like it's like, right, you're gonna have this challenge to work through, and
mm,
then you're gonna share it with other people and help other people. And I'm like, okay, that's not really a job, but okay. I'll do that. Um, and and so really and truly, it's me showing up. It's me sharing my life, and it's me showing up as my sacred expression. I love your sacred expression. It's me showing up as my authentic self, as my truth,
Yeah.
as my human. It's me showing up as my divine being in human form,
Yes.
figuring it out.
Yes.
That is me figuring it out. That is my work. Me figuring it out and then helping you to also figure yours out. I seem to have got a hair in my eye. It's very irritating.
Oh.
Okay. So there's quite a lot there to unpack, I suppose.
Well, that's also a very vulnerable place to be as well, right? And that's, I think, certainly for me, that's why it's one of the reasons why it's hard to talk about what I do, or yeah, my job, as it were, because it is about showing up as yourself rather than putting a kind of hat on and saying, I'm a yoga teacher, which I can't say anymore, by the way. I just, went through that evolution, and I literally, I don't identify with being a yoga teacher anymore because of what it means generally. And I know that people like and other people in my community understand the many, 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 many levels of what that means.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't even say that to people at school anymore, or things like that. It's I just don't identify with it. But
Mm.
when you take a badge like that, or you say I work for a company, it's not, it's like a costume, isn't it? It's something you
Yeah.
put on and then you can take off at the end of the day. Whereas what you just described is literally being yourself, showing up, being raw, sharing that. And I don't think that people who aren't in that situation can appreciate how difficult that is.
Mm.
How difficult that is to box up, but also to, yeah, because you're literally just putting it all out there for anybody to say
Mm.
they want about.
Yeah. Yeah. And make their own judgments about you, and yeah. And and even that like what saying something to one person, and then a month later feeling completely different, and having and wanting to share something completely different. It's even that can derail someone who shares in the way that we do for days, for hours, whatever it is, because you're like, there's so many nuances
Yes.
within that, because like you say, it is so actually so friggin' hard to share your vulnerabilities in the way that you're called to, and not know what's next.
Yeah.
You
Def-
know, sometimes I have you'll have offerings at the moment. People are like, oh no, not yet, and I'm like, yeah, probably not going to happen again.
yeah.
Because the way I work, I mean, that's cool. Like, you're not in, that's fine. Like, I completely trust your heart, but
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm probably not going to do this again. Like, I know from the way I work,
Yeah.
potentially it could come around, but in 6 months' time, a year's time, even 6 weeks' time, I'm probably going to be going to a different curriculum
Yeah.
and speaking from a different place and sharing different information.
Yeah.
And that's just the way
That's
I personally roll, like
yeah.
that. And I've had to do so much work on just being able to accept,
Same.
because
Yeah.
you know it's how hard is it? It's like, this is the model of business. You show up like this and you do this forever, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't feel right for me. So
But I love but that kind of piece about evolution, about showing up as you are in the moment, because it really does break that old paradigm of, first of all, you have to have a job and that's it for your life, or you might change a couple of times, but basically it's the same. And second of all, it allows us to evolve. That's what we're here for. We're not
exactly.
here, yeah. So I think that is honestly the way I see humanity going, in terms of just showing up, learning what we need to learn personally, but also collectively, and sharing that. And I see that happening on a bigger and bigger scale, and more kind of rapidly as well, which I
Mm.
think is truly beautiful. Um, but in this kind of transition period right now, it does make it hard for people like us who are kind of like, oh, I don't really fit in anywhere, and I keep, changing my mind. It's not changing your mind at all. It's,
No.
yeah, I totally
It's
get you.
change. It's just following the call of the soul, following
Yeah,
the the call of the heart. It's like my heart last year. All my heart wanted to do was share about nature and seasons and cycles, and it was freaking amazing. I loved every single session. I loved every single post came from a place, and now I'm like, maybe I should be writing about the season. And I'm like, okay, and I'll do my practices and I'll do everything that I know, helps me to flow.
yeah,
And I'm just like, there's nothing's coming. I'm like waiting for the inspiration, waiting for the words to flow, and I'm like, no, it's not happening. And I'm hearing different words and new words and yeah, going with that and trusting that and not being imprisoned in the shoulds is so
good.
freeing, because the shoulds 2-3 years ago would have imprisoned me, and I would have been, square peg round hole,
Yeah,
working my way through this year feeling really uncomfortable. But actually, just giving myself the permission to change course as and when that change comes is, yeah, mind blowing.
it really is mind blowing and kind of energy expanding, because suddenly,
Yeah.
yeah, suddenly I come back to this around my painting, and that the feeling that, like, certainly maybe this will change for me, but certainly in the last year I just feel like having found, or rather allowed, not found, it was always there, having
Mm,
allowed this piece of me to express in this way, it just feels so delicious and easy and, magical, and not in a fluffy way, but really properly magical. And when I think about doing certain other things that I've done in the past, like running courses and stuff, my kind of heart, everything just drops. It's like,
yeah,
and I contract, and I just, that was part of my evolution. It's not that that wasn't me at the time. It was, but now I find more and more I can really tune into, no, I'm not doing that, because it just, everything just contracts and stops.
yeah.
Whereas this thing, it may not make any logical sense. And when I started painting, it really didn't, but it was like, well, we're all locked down. What else am I going to
Yeah.
do? But
Yep.
yeah, it just, it makes sense for my soul and for who I am and for who I'm
Mm,
becoming. So
yeah.
that's it, really, isn't it?
And I just when you say that, I just think how what a different place the world would be if you weren't doing that. Like if you weren't sharing your art and your just the visual. I'll scroll Instagram and I'll just see your expression, and it just makes even that it just makes me like, oh yeah, you know? And I don't know exactly what it does to me, but there's somewhere along the line I'm picking up on that vibration, and I see, your art in other people's homes, and I think, oh, it's like, you know, amazing that's just even a thing that we get to experience. And I just think, so many. I mean, I could interview you now, right, so easily because I'm so interested in in I think artists are such interesting beings, and um, any form of expression, like soul expression, whether it's music,
Yeah.
dance, singing, artist, artistry in all of its many many forms. How how did you get out your own way? Because I know what
Yeah.
it. I know, all
Yeah.
of the stories, and I just think it's so interesting. I'd love to know that.
Honestly, it has been a long process. And you can probably look at your life and recognize at least one big area where it's been a gradual process of getting out of your own way. Even just to becoming self-employed and following your kind of path on this crazy journey, what it means to be entrepreneurial or self-employed or whatever kind of non-masculine energy word you want to choose for it. But I was pushed because at the beginning of 2020, I had kind of workshops lined up, to take sacred expression yoga around the country and possibly even
Yeah.
abroad. I was kind of looking at that as well. And, it was exciting and daunting.
Mm,
And then it all just came to a big crashing stop. And I had to kind of really go within and honestly just started to really follow the nudges because I didn't have anything to lose. And that was what it came down to, really. I totally suppressed my artistic, obviously I've been creative in lots of other ways.
mm,
Um, but I had totally suppressed that real kind of expansive expression in this form
yeah.
for a very long time because it just didn't feel valuable. It didn't feel, you know, like a recommended route to income, amongst other things. Yeah, it felt very indulgent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Mm.
But I would love to know for you, can you recognize that kind of pattern in your own life and your own path as something else?
Hmm. I was going to say, when I decided to leave, I mean, I was a secondary school teacher. When I decided to leave that, I'd already had 3 years of supporting my husband through mental illness, and raising our daughter pretty much
Yeah,
solo. Through no fault of his own. Me and my husband are still together. We've worked through all of these issues, and it's very we're very open and honest about it. Um, but I did make the decision from quite a selfish place, because I felt like I deserved it. I felt
yeah,
like I'd been through so much heartache and struggle. Um, that wasn't, at the time I was very I was very entitled, felt entitled, but I thought I felt like I deserved to give myself a break. Felt
yeah,
like I deserved to I put up with so much, and I've held and, you know, done and sacrificed so much.
yeah,
I was coming from a place of, I really fucking deserve. I deserve to be happy. I deserve to be okay. If I'm going to have to keep dealing with this and this and this and this, all things that aren't my fault and out of my control, I want to be able to control my own happiness. Um, and I loathed my teaching job, loathed it. It wasn't what it was supposed to be.
mm.
Um, I mean, I had some lovely colleagues. It's not a good place for me.
Yeah.
And I did have to get over and get around and work through and learn to love the self-indulgent piece.
Yeah.
So when I made the decision, it was like that, it wasn't there. I didn't feel guilty. I felt like I was worth it. But then as the time went on, I started to think, shit, what have I done? Like, oh, where did I make that decision from? And like, it was, I mean, my husband reflected it back to me, and brought some core truths out in that. Um, I think the most thing that I feel indulgent? It's a really good question. Think about it. Now, not at all, but there's definitely been a process through that
Yeah.
where that has been a thing, and a lot of it is the freedom and flexibility. You know, like I will have to. I have. There's been times when I've had to say, "Look, I'm having the morning off because I've got a group class tonight." So like I may look like I'm just sitting on the sofa drinking tea and watching trashy TV, but because I'm working the other end of the day,
It's
um,
funny how we have to justify that, or we feel we have to
justify,
justify
yeah.
that, though. Yeah.
Mm. So yeah, I wouldn't say it felt indulgent, but I did feel like I had to justify the flexibility that I had created.
Yeah.
Um, and still do. Like I still have to say that to my daughter. She's like, "What have you done all day, mummy?" And I'm like, well, it works on my energetic frequency, and I, took the dogs for a walk and spoke to the trees, and I received from Mother Earth. She's just like, look, why can you not just be normal? And I'm like, I don't know. But I'm like, well, I'm working tonight, so I had to, I had to take some time off this day and go for a walk. And yeah, that's the funny world we live in, isn't it? Where
Yeah.
we have to justify and share. I love that. I love that yeah, art is indulgent.
Yeah,
Because
and there is another. Sorry.
it's totally not.
No, no,
I don't believe
it's
it is.
absolutely not. And I have come to embrace that, definitely. I find and because I love working big, because I work with my whole body, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
that's another indulgent piece. And I've had to work kind of gradually up as well. So my pieces are I really want to get very big eventually, but
Wow.
uh I have to work up to that, because even now it's like, well, they're really the biggest it can be for most people to put up in their house on their wall somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's obviously a constraint,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's working to that kind of size, which it is. I call it basically life size, like it is in the sacred expression yoga, because it is the whole body. um it does feel, because most people, when they think of paintings, they think of something, well, I'm assuming this, they think
Yeah,
of
it's a
something that
lot of assumptions here. I
is
was going to butt in and say there's a lot of big houses with very big walls.
you're sure, yeah. Yeah.
So, like, don't even just, don't limit yourself on the walls that there are people that we may not ever come into contact with that have bigger walls than
Sure.
you and I do. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
But there was another important piece that I wanted to touch on, actually, which to relate back to sensitivity and our soul expansion. And that
mm,
was that over the last decade, basically, I have tapped more and more into the understanding, the deep embodied understanding, that when I don't follow the soul nudges,
mm,
I get sick. And
mm,
I've talk about the fact that I've had a lifetime of chronic conditions, like multiple, all compounded together, getting worse and worse until basically into my 30s, when I started to gently kind of unpick and unravel all of that for myself.
Yeah.
And every single time I've tried to fit back into a box that did not fit me, it even, and more so, like the subtlety of it becomes, maybe I'm just more tuned, but the subtlety of it seems to be more and more like, you know actually, I'm not gonna work at this particular point of the day because my energy is not in the right frame. It's not the right kind of frequency or whatever. That's how subtle it gets.
Yeah.
And it will manifest physically somehow.
Yeah.
And that, to me, or I will have a few days where I'm just wiped, totally
Yeah.
wiped. And I know that's because I'm processing. Generally, it's not a bad thing. It's usually just that I'm processing stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes it is because I've done something that was incongruous with my soul needs, basically. And I
Yeah.
know that, like, in daily conversation, that sounds absolutely bonkers and totally off the planet, and most
No.
people will not relate to it. But I know that, like, our community probably will.
Mm-mm.
So
Yeah, and I'm like, yeah, when you say that, I think, God, yeah, shit, would people I have a really warped reality of what normal people would
yeah,
accept, and what, what I'm like, oh shit, is this acceptable? No, but I'm really lucky to have a core group of friends that are not in the community, so to speak, but are totally open and accepting of um views that we would consider to be quite not. And I think that's interesting just to drop that in there, because I think more and more people are waking up, and consciousness is missing, but it just even just the threads of the thought are like, yeah, that's not really working anymore, and yeah, that actually does make sense to a part of me that I hadn't tuned into before.
yeah,
When someone says something, you're like, yeah, that's totally, I believe in that. That's, I feel that in my body. I feel like that's happening more and more. So that's really positive. But yes, to go back to that, I'd look. I mean, yeah, I wrote something yesterday where I said my body is my barometer of happiness.
yeah,
I'm in a period of expansion at the moment, so I'm feeling a contraction in my lower back and in my hip flexors, which is a common thing for me.
yeah,
Um, I, yeah, I mean, I have this nasal thing going on. I sound quite, and I never get sick because I decided about 5 years ago that I didn't believe in colds.
yeah,
I didn't believe that, like, I didn't believe in germs.
yeah,
Like, if my daughter had had a cold, it was her body's way of, she was teething. It's her body's way of slowing her down. Maybe she, school and all of that kind of stuff. Of course, she's going to get sick because she doesn't really want to be there, and.
yeah,
So I gave it up. So when she actually got a cold last week, picked something up from school, even though I don't believe in that, it happened. It was like this transmission of like, oh, mum, such and such is not very well today. She wasn't here. Oh, mum, today I sat next to such and such and they coughed in my face all day. And I was thinking, oh, great. And then like 2 days later, she has a thing. But I personally don't get ill. Um, and um, it was really interesting because I allowed that in as a form of sabotage because I launched last week.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so I didn't get the full thing.
yeah,
It felt more like allergies.
yeah,
And I wasn't like total, I wasn't coughing like, I didn't get the thing, but I allowed something, my consciousness allowed something of it in as a form of
yeah,
to slow me down. in some way, or form of sabotage. Whereas normally it would have just been like, nope, like real strong boundary there, like nope. But as as sensitive, that's a little bit of a side note there, but a sensitivity, if something is not on, something's not going right, feel it in my body straight away. It,
Yeah.
I have this very left side or right side, like I noticed I was pushing a lot,
Yes.
and I trapped my hand and almost broke my hand,
Oh,
and then left right hand, and then 2 days later we were on a rope swing, and I flung back and smashed my right foot into the tree. So we know within 2 or 3 days I'd got these really painful injuries on the right side of my body.
yeah.
It was just like, you're going to listen to me,
Yeah.
listen to your body. But no, I yeah,
That is interesting because as well, I often manifest my conditions, my chronic conditions, when they do flare up. It's on the right side of my body typically.
yeah,
And I've always found that really fascinating, but of course, no GP finds that fascinating at
yeah.
all.
So no,
And even when you talk to kind of holistic practitioners, they don't really know. They've got different theories, but yeah,
yeah,
it's super interesting to me. I want to
yeah,
come back though to what you said about being a really sensitive child and
yeah.
how you feel about that now, because I could obviously that brought up a lot of emotion for you. And I get the feeling that it's still a relationship that you're not super comfortable with. Does
Mm.
that sound?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm realizing and understanding that I absorbed in those situations. Um, and I continue to do that, I think, through childhood. I continue to be the sponge of emotional charge within the family.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, I don't know if you know this about me, Zoe, but I actually did write a book about sensitive children.
I
In
did not know that.
So in 2018-ish, 17, 18-ish, because I started to see similar traits in my daughter.
Yes.
And even though she's very different from me, and, she has a very different father, she's very lucky because she has the yin and the yang. Like she has she
Yeah.
has the polar opposites, guiding her. So I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but she's just a very different person from me, very very
Yeah.
different. But she still has that sensitivity trait within her, and so I was guided to write that, and I shared a lot at that time because that was what I was going through. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's what I was going through. I literally devoted a year of my life to the process of sharing this, writing and sharing this book that was really came very very quickly and easily. Um, that's what I spoke about, and that's what I shared. For that time, and
What is your book called?
it's called The Sensitive Subject.
And can we find that
It's on Amazon. Yeah, you
on
can
Amazon?
find
Yeah.
that on Amazon. Yeah. And um, I mean I mean, I don't know where you want me to go with this because I could talk all day about it, but it was really healing for me
Yeah.
to do. There was a lot of what I had to face was like, what's my mum going to say about this?
Yeah.
Like, am I going to make my mum feel really bad? Am I going to make my mum feel guilty for not knowing? So we had to have a couple of conversations, but it was so interesting because so many people opened up to me around it, but there
Mm.
were so many grandparents that would come to me and be like, "Oh, you've helped me understand my grandchild," you know,
Oh.
and it was just so so lovely. And I think my mum was very aware that I was an only child. I was a bit of a wimp anyway.
Yeah.
I still am a bit of a wimp, really. Don't like confrontation. Didn't have siblings, I never had that, no, that's mine. No, that's, that kind of arguing. I hate you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to dangle you upside down from your legs. All that. I didn't have that rough and tumble.
That must have been so triggering when you had children then, because have you got more than one?
No, I've only got one.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah. No, I only have one. And again, that's not really through choice. That was I wanted a bigger family, but that was just circumstance. We
Sure.
just had the one. And so, um, no, what was triggering? Yeah, when I did have a child, I was just very aware that I was like, wow. Around about the same time, though, this is the thing. I didn't always know about high sensitivity and
Yes.
empathy and intuition.
Yeah.
It's something that I discovered around the same time as my daughter was born. So
Yeah.
I was like, shit, I'm learning about this and I'm noticing it in her and I'm remembering it about myself and I'm connecting all the dots and I want to help other people with this. Like,
Yeah.
and I got a download. I'm not gonna fluff it up. I was doing a meditation. I got a download. Archangel Gabriel. It was very, very, very. I literally got up from the breath work and wrote it all down. And I, literally had the whole framework, and that's what everything's born from.
Amazing.
And they don't happen very often. Don't happen like that very often, but it did at that particular time, and so
Yeah.
I knew that it was worthwhile and it was worthy and I had to do it. And it gave me the confidence to do that. So there was a lot of healing that happened within that period of my life and sharing that the sensitivity stuff and moving through it with my daughter and being and like, telling her the stuff that I wish I was told as a
Yeah.
child.
Yeah.
And, we still that was just healing for me, I didn't have to go back, and forgive my mum. I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
forgive
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
mum, but I didn't have to go back and do the work. So I was doing the healing
Yeah.
you in the moment, in the present with her. And she's, she still does have her wobbles. Like,
Of course.
sometimes she certainly picks up on things, or she knows certain things are going on. She's very intuitive that way. But in terms of sensitivity, um, she knows, and we manage that very well, but she knows, and we have always done that from quite a young age, from around about the age of 3, 4, been very open with her about, no, you know, we don't want to do, like we don't over plan, we don't over schedule, we
Yeah.
don't have too much stimulation, all of the different things. It's like, we know, so she's very, um, she knows. It's like, whereas when I felt like her as a child, it was
Yeah.
all like, what's wrong with me? Why
Yes.
do I feel like this? There was no answers. It was all just a mystery. And I think as children, the
Yeah.
mystery that we conjure up is to internalize that and go, well, there must be something wrong with me.
Of course.
And there must be something wrong with me. What is my theme? Worthiness
Yeah.
and being good enough and um, being too weird or being too cookie or, just being for people, being too much for people. That whole thing is at my core.
And so where do you feel now, where are you now on that kind of feeling of what sensitivity means for you and for your child
Mm.
and for, kind of humanity as a whole right now? Like what
Mm.
piece does that sensitivity mean to you?
It just comes to me as the empowered empath. Like, yes, I'm sensitive, but I know how to take care of myself. I'm energetically sovereign. So like people say to me, "Oh, I don't want to offload on you. I don't want to affect you." I'm like, babes, you can't affect me. Like, you can pour your heart out. I'm energetically sovereign enough
Love that. Yeah.
to like, no, like,
Yeah.
I don't need to carry the crystals everywhere with me. I don't need to do the this or that and this. I mean, the tools are,
Yeah.
are super helpful, like cleansing sprays or certain crystals or, you know, I do a practice in the evening of cleansing and closing down and protecting at night. That's how I mainly get. Um, so I have my cracks where things come in, but um, I'm energetically sovereign to I'm responsible for my energy, you
Yeah.
know? Um, you can't affect my energy without my permission, and I'm not giving you permission to affect my energy. There's a
Yeah.
lot of and so sensitivity is my gift. It's
Yeah.
my I don't see it as a victim piece, and I think some people have. I mean, I certainly did do to start off with a little bit, although I was really like I'm happy that I'd discovered this thing about myself and I understood myself more. It was still a
Mm.
bit more like, oh, but I've got to protect myself and I can't go to busy places and I've got to be, to this and this and this and this and I can't cope with that kind of environment. Well, actually, I can, and I choose not to.
Yeah.
It's more like seeing it from just having a different lens on it. So
Yeah.
sensitivity is now my gift. It allows me to hold space. Um, it allows me to I don't know what else allows me to do. I think really feel and tune into emotions and tune into the emotion of what we experience. And I
Yeah.
mainly, I suppose, share that through writing, but also with my, any teaching, any groups, any courses that I do. That's mainly where I share that deep heart stuff that comes from the sensitive, empathic place.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think touching on that thing about emotions as well, for me, you mentioned depression in the past, and that's also been a big part of my life, even as a
Mm.
child. Like, I had very early memories of childhood depression.
Mm.
um and I remember in my 20s talking about that with therapists, and they were shocked that I had been depressed at such a young age, but there was no other word really for it.
Uh,
And I very much relate that now to the shutting down of, the kind of the sensitivities of like creating those barriers and
yeah,
shutting down the bandwidth of emotions that you kind of really tune into, or you allow yourself to tune into, because
yeah,
it's too much, or it felt too much. It felt too much in a world where having that kind of sensitivity was deemed to be wrong, was deemed to be um ridiculous, or over the top, or whatever, and
or
that
very
80s.
triggering for other people, like triggering for
Yeah.
other people. You knowing something about somebody that they don't know about themselves or that they've never admitted to anybody else is got me in so much trouble. I could sit with someone and be like, oh, I know that you're upset about that, and they're like,
Yeah.
oh, like
Yeah.
got me into so much trouble as a child, people pleaser, wanting to be friends with people and knowing things about people. So yeah, sitting down and not wanting to feel the pain of everybody
Yes.
or the nervousness of everybody. How I got through my GCSEs, I'll never know. I think we probably just didn't give a shit in like 1996 about
Yeah.
exam. That must have been the thing. But no, I totally sorry to interrupt you there, but I totally resonate with that because the shutting down happened. Yeah, for me, probably before I was about 10, and I didn't open it back up again until I was in my early 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. And when we shut down like that, then it's you're numb.
Yes, that's exactly. I've wanted to get that word in for such a long time. Numb. How's my childhood? It was numb. That's why, why it made me so sad. But yeah,
Yeah. And so then, of course, you're not experiencing the bandwidth that we're supposed to experience as humans. And of course, that's gonna depress you. It's gonna depress your very essence of being, because you're not being.
yes, you're not being exactly.
And when I think, and this is becoming much more talked about now, thank God. including in kind of, standard, psychotherapy appointments and whatever it is,
Mm,
whatever tools they use, it it is about learning to process emotions rather than just shutting them down and
yeah.
kind of denying them and suppressing them, whether that's medically, mentally, or whatever way that might be for you. Um, and learning to sit with emotions that do feel big. That's one of the big things I'm trying to teach my kids at the moment, is that when whatever emotion, you can call it anger, you can call it frustration, you can call it sadness, whatever you want to label it, and it might be a big mixed bag of lots of different emotions. That's normal too.
Yeah.
um can you just sit with it and just, you know yes, notice all the feelings, but not, and let it move, let it sit in that discomfort
Mm.
or that amazing feeling, if it's on the other end of the scale, if it's euphoric or, whatever, just be in that and just really allow it to process rather than stuffing it down or, yeah,
Identifying with it,
identify getting it stuck. Exactly,
like,
exactly. And I,
and I'm an angry child, like that,
yes,
you know. Oh, he's an angry child. Like, yeah,
yeah,
angry's not, angry's not an identity. It's a temporary feeling that we all experience, and that is, when it's healthily expressed, it's part of being human. you
yeah,
know. Yeah, these judgments around emotions are. I mean, I think the work is there and it's coming online, but yeah, there's a lot to be rewritten about how we perceive, um, yeah, our humanness, and
yeah,
that's really where I am in my, like, with work, with what I call it work. It's not really work, but that's where I am when I'm where I'm sharing from right now. So many judgments um, are caused. I mean, because I'm like constantly, like I said, evolving and wanting to get to the root of everything and figure out why I am like I am and what I can do to, move through that. And the whole "I'm not good enough" piece, I started to notice that there was these threads within, like, yeah, around emotions, like, oh, I'm angry and I shouldn't be angry, and
yeah,
I'm in my head and I shouldn't be in my head, and all of these things, all these shoulds and shouldn'ts, and um, so I started to unpick those and realize that actually they were causing me even more damage, and like, they were just throwing more fuel on the fire of "I'm not good enough." And there was a real surrendering process to all of the messy, ugly, that I would use that word, messy, ugly, um, conflicting, distorted, dark, all of the stuff that we.
yeah.
And part of that, I mean, that's why I loved sharing Journey with the Cycle and the Seasons, because I really gave life to, like, our PMS, our wild woman.
Oh,
I
yeah,
really, really brought autumn to life and been like, as a season, the core teaching of that is we allow autumn to happen.
yeah.
We allow nature to be messy and muddy and murky
I
and
love
disgusting.
that.
We allow her to be that. We don't go for woods and, we don't be like, oh, autumn, people say, might not like autumn, but we just kind of almost get on with our lives without even, noticing what happens. So why do we not allow that in ourselves? Like,
Yeah,
there's a death. Autumn is a transition. It's a death. It's a transition between life and death. Of course, we're going to feel like shit, you
yeah,
know. But if we can lean into our inner nature, that is perfectly reflected
yeah,
outside in nature, and we, bring the love and affection and reverence that we have for outer nature to our inner nature, we create this beautiful cycle of acceptance and this beautiful openness to, yeah, no wonder I feel like shit. I've just gone from like summer to winter, life to death in like what, 12 days. Of course
Yeah.
I'm gonna,
Yeah.
of course I'm gonna feel like shit. Of course I'm gonna be messy. Of course I'm gonna be, wild and want to do different things and speak to people in different ways. And, I am, yeah, so I loved all of that work, I loved doing that work and I still love speaking about it, as you can tell.
And I think that also taps really well back into that idea of, where depression
Mm.
typically comes from for most of us, is because we're trying to bland everything out, aren't we? We're trying
Yeah,
to kind of make it this narrow strip of, well, this is what it's going to be all the time.
the
It's like
time.
this average kind of piece. Let's cut across the middle, and that's the life
Yeah,
that we'll try and live in here, instead of honoring all the natural cycles, the natural seasons, our rhythms, all of that, because it's deemed to be um like interruptive. It's it what's the word? It
no,
interrupts our kind of everyday 9 to 5. This is,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I just, when you said that, that's, go back to like the industrial revolution. The factory worker just had to be the grind, dirt, dirt, dirt. You show up, you show up, you show up. That's it. There
Yeah,
was no fluctuations. It was just, and that has been,
it's
yeah,
carried on. Yeah.
carried on and carried on and carried on. And if you think back to that paradigm and that it worked at that time in the world, but we're not there now. We're not in the
Mhm.
industrial revolution. We're don't know what revolution, I don't know what period of time they're calling this one right now, but we're in a period of time that is, growth and expansion is so rapid. We've moved beyond the technological
Yeah.
age, whatever we're into now, whatever they're calling it. And I don't know if you've ever come across a lady called Heidi Sawyer,
No.
a Hay House author. She's written a book called this, I can't remember, highly intuitive people, I think, highly sensitive, intuitive people, something like that. But I remember reading like a webinar of hers or attending a webinar and getting the transcript, and it was very much like the world is going to need us.
Yeah.
Technological age is kind of automating things and doing all this stuff, da da da. And but what it can't do is human empathy. What it
Yeah.
can't do is intuition. What it
Yeah.
can't do is reading a room and picking up on sensitivities of, subtle differences within the room. It can't hold space. It can't
Oh, yeah.
channel, it can't channel the divine, so all of that at that gate and at that point I've got complete full body goosebumps while I'm saying this, but when I read that, it really helped me to see that I was valuable,
Yes.
and that was huge for me.
I think honestly that is such a perfect note to kind of
Mm,
end on, because that just brings it all back um into full acceptance and full kind
mm,
of embodied goosebumps is where it's
yeah.
at for me as well.
Mm,
Absolutely. I really love that.
thank
Kathy,
you.
thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
sharing all of your sensitivity, vulnerability, and whole self with us.
Always. Thank
And
you.
yeah, just let us know as well where we can find you, please.
While I'm here, no, I'm in Sheffield. My Instagram's still got that hair in my eye.
Oh,
My Instagram is Kathy with a K dot Bell, and then there's a bit of an annoying underscore after that. So Kathy dot Bell underscore. Very very simple, and happy to you know
I'll
to
put
share.
these all in the show notes, so it's
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes. My website is just kathybell.uk. That's pretty easy. That one's the easy one. Mainly you'll find me on Instagram, but I do have a Facebook group, and because I haven't forgotten the name of that right now, but you find your way there
I
through
will pop
Instagram.
that. below as well. Do you know, I always love it when other people's brains mirror my own, because I'm so forgetful about things in the moment. I'm like, what is that word? What is that thing that I do every single day?
Yeah, where is my thing? Yeah, no, I'm yeah. It's a family trait, but I do find it's yeah, it's getting worse. All those times I've like cussed my mum for, like being so forgetful and things, and now it's happening to me, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
that, that's awkward. But yeah, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed
it's been amazing. Amazing conversation. Thank you.